All right, we are live. Ladies, thank you so much for the Sunday Divine Feminine Roundtable. We're joined today with Joanne, who is from Australia. God bless her. It's 3 in the morning there. So we're all time traveling because it's Monday. And it's Sunday when we're recording this. And we have the lovely Nina with us, Laura Eisenhower, and Jane, beloved friend of mine, has a fantastic energy, a warrior spirit to help hold the container. And the reason why we are getting together today is this topic is healing the inner child, because it is truly all about the children. So if you would with me, just for one quick moment, 1 minute, if we can just pop up into our heart, focus attention on the area of the heart. Imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of the heart, breathing in a little deeper and slower than usual, and make an active, specific intention to activate the feeling of compassion, care, and love for and for the entire planet. And bring it back. So last time that we got together, we were talking about Nina's experience of her with the John Podesta torturing the child in the shower. And so Joanne reached out to me, as Joanne, who is here with us from Australia, was sharing that we really need to heal the childhood trauma that we have within ourselves. Because when the full disclosure comes out, we do have protests in Hollywood today, or this weekend, on what's been happening with the children. When the full disclosure comes out, a lot of people on the planet, their own childhood trauma will be triggered. So the whole purpose of this discussion is to, again, provide tools to help the collective when this actually starts to take place, or when the full disclosure happens. So we thought that this would be a good topic, because it really is about the children and helping them heal, and the inner child within all of us, so that we can truly feel safe and truly be free. So who would like to begin? Laura, do you want to begin maybe with the planetary influence, perhaps, as we want to start, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. And yeah, it's actually so interesting that we're doing this show on this particular day, because the sun is actually making a challenging aspect to Uranus. And Uranus is the planet of shock and upheaval that leads to great awakening. But when it's making a challenging aspect, it tends to bring up traumas, just memories stored in our nervous system. You know, traumas are stored in our nervous system. And so sometimes knee-jerk reactions can take place, maybe a panic attack under these sort of influences, and just kind of like a fight or flight response to certain stimuli or events that might take place, something somebody might say, just something that might just come up from the past. And I got hit with it pretty early in the morning with threatening emails from somebody, and I was just ready to just, you know, I don't know, just the best I could do was just clear it and block this person. It's like, okay, because this is out of line. This isn't just something that I'm just feeling upset over through a projection. This is actually something that is inappropriate to have in my life. So that's just kind of an example too, where the knee-jerk reaction is causing maybe more of a need to deal with it than be sort of tolerant and okay, well, let's just let this continue on. And so sweeping changes can sometimes happen. People can come in and out of our lives really quickly as well. It's a time of crisis, very often, this particular placement. And crisis can lead to great awakening, or crisis can lead to a person getting more locked in victimhood and more locked and immersed into the unhealed wounds of one's childhood. And so as light warriors, or when we determine that we are going to allow adversity to strengthen us and to help us to gain greater wisdom and stronger boundaries, any of these challenging aspects can really, serve us. And this is what we're dealing with on the planet. And this is what we just deal with a lot in our lives, is in the face of adversity, in the face of things that really bring up fears, anxieties, wounds, and, fears of abandonment or rejection. What do we do in the face of that? Because those are the greatest opportunities to heal. It might feel like that's when everything is starting to digress us or take us backwards. But in those moments is when a lot of potent energy work can take place, a lot of mindfulness and consciousness, and an ability to be more accountable to that particular reaction to, something from outside of the self. Because we got to step back and kind of look at it. Is this me? Is this an old wound that I'm projecting? Or is this literally something that requires a boundary? So this is a big day for that. The whole rest of the year is actually going to be a lot of fiery aspects with like Mars and Pluto and Eris, which is the goddess of strife and conflict. So people are really tapping into the anger and frustration in the collective consciousness. And there's a lot of misguided anger, and it's very easy for that misguided anger to be funneled into or merged into a false movement or something to, gain a foothold of where to channel that anger. And so that's kind of being used against us. So we really need to focus on our own authentic selves and step back and find our own personal truth before we really join into a group mind type thing, because group mind type things can be dangerous. We are obviously seeking unity consciousness, but we need to have the individuality piece down first, a sense of who we are on an authentic level. People are so wounded in their self-esteems and their sense of self that the feeling of needing to belong is so huge, and being different has always been a stigma of being isolated, being ostracized, or being misunderstood and called crazy. So a lot of people are ruled by these inner childhood wounds of lack of support, lack of validation, lack of love and support. And so we're seeing, most of the troubles in the world are unresolved traumas and wounds from childhood and previous lifetimes. So there's going to be a lot of awesome opportunities for transformation, because this is what this whole year is about anyway, because of the Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn conjunctions, the Saturn, Jupiter moving into Aquarius, all these planets in retrograde also, until around October, November, a lot of them will start moving direct, including the outer planets, which are initiatory planets that are focused, helping us to focus on the inner work. But as these, things begin to move into Aquarius, I think people will have learned these current lessons, and a lot of people will have really taken the time to understand what this growth period is about for humanity, not through the media or the movements, but through their own connection with Source, Earth, and their own soul essence. And if enough people do that with that alignment being intact, then we're in for some really positive, things. And so as we see on the planet right now, there's a lot of divide. Some, aren't able to do that at this time. And so it's just really important that people are very patient and compassionate. We're not all in the same, place. And this growth period is so difficult because it's basically encouraging people to see that the reality they thought was a true reality is made of lies. And there's not a whole lot of trustworthy leadership out there. And it's hard to know who to trust and what to believe. So that's going to bring up childhood wounds too, of feeling betrayal from one's parents, maybe the school systems if they were bullied. And so this micro macro connection is like a lot to work. So we're going to get outer stimuli and decide what we're going to do with it internally. We're going to get internal, things light off, and then we're going to determine what to do with it and what we should express in the face of it, especially when we're dealing with people that might not be treating us in the way that we deserve. And so we got to keep ourselves from stooping down to a lower vibration and keep it as high as possible. But the more acknowledgement we give to the childhood wounds, the better. We're dealing with Chiron, the wounded healer, which connects to childhood wounds. And that actually is connected to the 13th sign of Fiacus, which is ruled by the ether. For us to truly access the ether and the transformative powers of the ether, we need to be willing to face our wounds with maturity and accountability, and with the inspiration to direct that energy in a positive way so that we can work with it and turn it into knowledge, wisdom, and and the ability to step up to the plate and be a guide and positive force for others.
So Laura, we really are having, not only are we having an individual identity crisis, but the collective is too, right? Like humanity's trying to figure out, like, who are we? Who are we really as a collective? Is this how we behave, right? And even individual.
Yeah, it's a huge identity crisis because social engineering and mind control and the indoctrination of school systems and generational patterns, ancestral patterns, have created identities for us that we try and either live up to or we might rebel from. So the act of rebellion can only last so long until it causes a certain level of exhaustion, because you got to know where you're running to, and then, you know, land and then generate that reality and be secure in it and not have to, you know, run away or fight something. So this identity crisis is incredibly important, because we're in a big deprogramming. We have to deprogram in order for the true organic reality, the true organic ascension that's available to us to emerge. And it can't emerge if we're running, you know, false programs or sub-personalities or engineered identities that aren't in alignment with our truth. And that's why there's so much illness, because the physical body needs authentic energies. It needs its own connection to higher awareness and self in order for the physical body to be healthy. So these distorted identities are actually, to me, the ultimate root of illness and unhealed traumas as well.
Yeah.
Well,
and so if we're worried about a pandemic or a virus, we should be more worried about, what do we need to clear? What do we need to amplify? What do we need to, you know? So anyway, thanks for letting me share. And
thank you, Laura.
If I could jump on in, Paula?
Actually, what I want, before you do, I wanted to share with the group that both Nina and Joanne, Nina sings light language, and so does Joanne, also sings light language. So if they're prompted for something to come through, just close your eyes and be with it, because it's validating what she's saying using English language, but it's more for the soul and for the DNA as well. So it kind of reinforces it, and it'll be imprinted in your field. Please continue, Joanne. Sorry, I just wanted to caveat that so folks have an understanding. If we just start singing and going into the light language, then they have a little bit of an idea of what that's about.
Olertayas takadadombos tayandaneninga. Ilolayo kukotoriate sasianananiandari kikanaya. So I've been a healer for really only about 12 years. But I've been on my spiritual journey for over 30. When I decided to become and focus upon healing, it's just somehow organically happened that inner child healing became sort of quite an important aspect of it. So I have dealt and talked with hundreds of people about what's been going on inside of them and in their mind and in their life in regards to their inner child trauma. So in my understanding, there are two sorts of inner child trauma. One is the fact that we are essentially raised by dysfunctional people or people who haven't resolved their trauma. So they are teaching us about the world and ourselves, you know, are we lovable? Are we valuable? Is the world safe or not? Through the filter of their traumatized child. So we learn about what is love, what is marriage, what is commitment, and a whole host of things from people who have this like a pair of glasses on with a filter. So the second form of trauma is that what is called a disaster, I suppose. It comes when you look at the word disaster, it means disassociation from the stars. So in the first 7 years of our lives, we are like a sponge. We don't analyze or assess what we are absorbing. We just take it on as gospel truth. And the situation, dad or whoever was closest to us. So we are in a place of being for that first 7 years. So we essentially live from all chakras, but mostly we understand that the connection through the fourth. We understand that we are part of something greater. We might not be able to explain it or even define it, but it's a knowingness within us. We're connected to source. We're connected to that portal in the heart. Now, at around 7 or 8, we move from the heart chakra to the head into the knowing phase. And we understand that at that point, we have to alter who we are to get the love we need. So we be good, we don't make a noise, we look after the younger siblings, and then we get love. Or we're mum or dad's emotional support, and then we get love. So we understand what we need to do to get by in the world. So these two traumas are very difficult for a little one to handle. So we split off. We have it in our peripheral awareness. So you as the adult and the child energy are affecting the world as it is magnetized to you. Now, the Jesuits have a phrase, give us the boy till 7 and we will give you the man for life. So the process, what I was described as the grey men, or that control, ultimate control on the planet, the grey men understand this process, and they've hijacked humans' evolution, particularly through the way we learn as children, the way we absorb truth about ourselves and our reality. And what I was talking with Paula about is that this is a reflection. So if it's the microcosm of the macrocosm, that as within, so without. So the trauma, the travesty that's been happening to millions of children for hundreds of years is in a way a reflection of has been floating around. And it was not until about 2 weeks ago that the missing pieces, the puzzle, came in and I saw an entire picture. And that it really is about the children, because it is a reflection of how we are all wounded inside and not even aware of the way that we are wounded. This peripheral awareness, this inner child pain, we push it down, we drink it down, or we drug it down, or we work it down, or we analyze it down even. So it is to move back in the body, because from my experience, most people are sort of half out of their body. They're not feeling, they're not anchored in the system, and to be able to be aware of what is in this. So the best thing, the first simple thing that we have to do to help the children on the planet that are in this dreadful situation is to start healing our own inner child by reclaiming and being willing to face those pains. So I always tell the people that I work with that I think that 90% of the planet is really run, or the people on the planet are run by an emotional 7-year-old. That we are conditioned to respond to that external world, like Laura said, from that external stimulus, from the perspective of the child. If we were to look at the energy that we and your early life circumstances, and this is what is determining what is magnetized to you. So when we've lived in a certain way for so long and been socially conditioned to not look within, but to be concerned with competition and success or survival, we never go within, we've pushed it all away. We've not dealt with it, and it needs to come back in. Oleli o chik tayata de kingayanda niyanda. Ilaleo kukush tayanda riata de kikanaya. So we have to be willing to feel this. That frequency can be altered and changed by understanding the components of that frequency wave. And when we understand the components of it and bring it in, we no longer are conditioned to respond. We break that programming, and then we choose how to be in the world rather than knee-jerk reacting to that external stimulus. And that's it for the moment.
Thank you. It feels really nice when light language is spoken. It feels really nice in your being. Like it's like it, for me, it feels like a song of truth, you know, whatever's being said. You don't know what, you know, in English language what it means, but it sure does feel good inside. So folks have to have a look at their own stuff. It really is the reckoning. I think I've shared that before on our talks before. This is the time of reckoning, the facing of the self and one's creations. And, you know, the guides that I work with through Paul Selig, which is a lot of the tools that I share, but that's where they come from. They talk about, you know, at the end of the day, the humanity's suffering can be reduced to a single idea, and that's the belief in separation, the belief that
yes,
we're not divine beings, and also the idea that the person over there that you hate could not possibly be of God, which is not true, right?
Mm.
There's nothing outside of source. Source is everything. It's the infrastructure of everything. So when we're ruled by our emotions, and to your point about external stimuli, and exactly what Laura was sharing in the beginning, when we can be ruled by anything externally, meaning that something has to happen out there to feel good, or something out there has to happen that puts us off kilter, that's the whole part of the macro, right? If you're so busy looking at what's out there, you're in reaction to what's out there, as opposed to when you're operating from the internal world, you're in response to, you're calling to you opportunities to learn and to grow.
So when you feel grief with regard to what's happening to the children, it is to see what is inside of you that is grieving. It is in a way an illusion. If, like, people who do not like Donald Trump, what is he bringing up in you? What is it that he's triggering in you? And for me, it's just to be as interested in your reaction to something as to what is actually happening. That there's a lot to be learned. It's a learning moment. If you really let go of what's triggering you, let go of Trump and say, what is he bringing up in me? And that's the healing moment.
Yeah.
I think that it's becoming very clear that we're all connected. And so the children that have been through these traumas, whether you directly have been through a trauma of this nature, we have all felt this in this pandemic. Galactics came in and they said to me, you've seen children in astral cages your whole life. And I had, and as someone who had been through a lot of sexual molestation and was involved in these types of ritualistic type things, I was very connected to those that were still going through this. And they said, what you have to understand is that you and everyone else has always carried this. You feel it in your bellies. You feel it in your wombs. You're just as connected to their pain. And so as this is going to be released and be shared, it's going to bring up the pain and the trauma that none of you have ever processed, whether you've actually directly experienced it or indirectly experienced it. And they were showing me in a future timeline, which is much closer to where we've arrived now, that all of those that have never done any type of inner work are literally going to, for the first time in their lives, have to face their own inner shadow. We're really going to have to go through the and Laura, I relate. I got a personal attack this week, and it was like, wow, really, so intense. And the Galactics came in, which is us from the future. So make that clear, us from new agreements with each other, and a lot of them, were not really interested in interacting with the other groups. And they said, this is now occurring. Everyone's galactic nature, what they've chosen, how they are choosing to participate, is going to be coming to the forefront in a way that no one can deny it anymore. And so if someone is carrying darkness in their heart and they haven't done that work, or if they're not interested in the agenda of service to source, and they're only interested in the agenda of service to self, it's going to become very clear. And this is going to start happening because service to source is coming, magnetizing towards each other, and service to self is magnetizing towards each other. But also within this, those of us that have been extreme victims of this and also have agreed to participate in these great experimentations, because we now need to stand up and say, no more. And it is this, what I've been experiencing this entire week has been this incredible awakening of divine starfire, and this remembrance of this sacred starfire that we have permission to use. So if you feel that you're being astrally attacked, because a lot of this is happening on the astral levels. Yes, we're sort of in 3D. We're actually, I think, more in 4D right now on an astral level. A lot is happening. You have permission to stand up and say, stop harassing me. No, I said no, leave. So that's what I've been doing all this week. And as far as the tools, to give people tools, I was guided to go down to the ocean and to do a personal ceremony of divorcing the 3D and 4D timelines, and divorcing all of the contracts that I had made as this lifetime and every lifetime. And it was so powerful because I saw that we were doing this on a collective level. It was a galactic divorcing of 3D, 4D. The marriages, the relationships, which have all been a lot of repetitions of this inner child trauma of us trying to resolve it on the inside on the outside, because we couldn't resolve it on the inside. And so a lot of us right now are feeling this extreme nervous system, just as Laura said, overwhelm. And all of the traumas that have been stored in the body, stored in our cells, stored in our nervous system that we've yet to process are coming out, so that we can give attention to them, we can move through them. Also, what became very clear was it's time for us to return the pain that we took into our bodies so that others wouldn't have to process it. It's time for us to give it back to the senders. And that became very clear for me in this ceremony. It's not ours to carry. And a lot of us that are light workers, a lot of us that have been through these traumas, for whatever reason, we feel like it is our responsibility to process their pain. We feel like it's our responsibility to protect them from their lessons. It seems to be a shadow aspect very much contained in the Pleiadian and in the family of light DNA. And what came through very clearly was, no, now everybody has to face God. And if you keep making excuses and you keep taking in their pain so they don't have to process it, you're actually not assisting in the evolution. By giving it back, by setting yourselves free, by making them have to finally drink their own poison, now they have to face themselves. And they have to face the light. And every single being will have to do that. So that's what this week has been about for me. And then this morning, I was given this incredible, beautiful image. And it was about how we have the ability to revisit and to rewrite the timelines of these traumas that we've been through. Also, the ability to go back and to rewrite these fairy tale stories that have locked us in these programmed cages. And the Galactics were showing me, what would it be like to rewrite the story of Snow White? Snow White goes back and she wakes up and she gives back the poison apple and she suddenly awakens and remembers she's a galactic starseed and she uses, her starseed powers. And so rewrite these things. And this might seem silly, but our inner children need this so much right now. And we're going through a collective process of growing up from the wounded inner child to the magical inner child. We reclaim our sovereign wombs. We reclaim our innocence, connected to the source of all of creation, that we are. We reclaim our sovereign nervous systems, and we release all the pain and the trauma that we have taken on through the collective. We return it to the senders. We will no longer take this into our bodies and into ourselves. We set ourselves free and remember that we are light, indestructible, that is eternal. As together we now return and rise in love.
It's important for folks. Thank you, Nina. That was absolutely beautiful. Yes, you tingles in love. It's beautiful. I think it's important for folks to know and to remember that how we create, what you put out, what you give out to the universe is magnified and returned to you. So when you're like, yeah, to somebody, it's going to come right back at you. And Laura's just gone now. And I'm just curious whether or not the energies now support that boomerang effect more so than ever. Like the bad that you do, if you're wanting to go nasty to somebody, it's going to come back at you like 1,000-fold. Are there influences happening right now, Laura, that are more prevalent?
Wouldn't that be like the retrogrades? Bam!
Yeah, there's a lot of retrogrades happening. And because 3 outer planets which are initiatory planets, are in retrograde, when they make challenging aspects, it becomes like really intense on the inside, because the planets are already going, in retrograde, meaning that the focus is on the inner work. If there's a challenging aspect, then there's, possible implosion from the inside. And that's good, because there's going to be less on the outside if we can handle all the shifts and changes that are necessary on the inside. The reason it shows up more on the outside is to get our attention, so that we can be more co-creative and participate in, what the future holds, because we're elemental beings, and our DNA holds the, elements in its nucleic acids. And as the ether is now available and ready to purify, we're able to do a major purification of our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical bodies. And the earth responds to that. So a lot of stuff is getting shaken up, and it's just going to take a lot of like I said before, maturity to be able to, kind of handle it and understand it. Because it's not just what's going on in our own personal lives. It's hard enough to just manage relationships and family and the things that we're, born into, but this is a big collective growth period that has everything to do with our throat chakra and expressing our truth and breaking down those programs, so that we're expressing a frequency that actually helps to neutralize these dark weapons. And the targeting and the hijacking is always about what that growth period is, right? So if we're here to recognize a better way to communicate with each other and use our words so that we're encouraging wellness and transformation in one another through kindness and compassion and integrity, and we see the targeting bringing us down to a place of conflict and strife and words that are somewhat demeaning and triggering for people. And I know that's kind of an old word that I think we wanted to adjust using, but we have the power to lift each other up and heal everything through the frequency of our words. And that's why it's so awesome that you guys are, expressing the light language, because that energy, is activating. So anyway, what we're seeing targeted is this growth period that's helping us to do all the inner processing with all these retrogrades, to get a grip on who we are, how we need to operate in the world, but we're being pulled and distracted into, this masking and this reversal of what this growth period represents, which is being silenced, being distanced. And so we still have the upper hand here. And if we can keep ourselves from going into, fear, because really the dark Saturn energy is outer authority. Parents are outer authority. Anything outside of us that represents authority is what conditions us. So if it's been abusive authority, when we get instructions coming from dark or nefarious places, sometimes it's hard to, see through it, because that wounded child is feeling, punished or put in timeout. And the feeling of helplessness overtakes a person. Now we have more ability to determine how we're going to run our energy and how we're going to respond, because we are now not the vulnerable children. And we are the guardians of future generations, though, and the children that don't have voices. So we're really stepping into the higher levels of Saturn in this transformation time, which requires self-mastery and to be able to overcome the trials and tribulations, to come out the other end in more self-mastery, which then gives a person the ability to be an authority of cosmic and natural law and divine forces that aren't controlling, but are more of an authority of words that create a structure that can actually hold space for the divine to fully come in and the multidimensional to fully come in. And so it's an authority that doesn't have control. It just has to do with structure and the natural, ebb and flow of, different cycles. And we are in this powerful ascension window period. So this transformation, if we can get through it and come out the other end, people will feel like, wow, they've mastered the realm of the archons. They've become senior to these lower entities, because all these challenges are here to make us strong. They're here to help us to recognize that in the face of adversity, the best of ourselves can come out. But in fear and in anxiety and disempowerment, I wouldn't say the worst of us comes out. For some, yes, but that loss of control means that something else is going to operate our vehicle. And that's where the next rollout of greater AI, transhumanism, and further assimilation into an artificial system. And this is the most crucial time for awakening because of that.
Mm.
Yeah, because what we're actually even seeing now with the protests in the US under the guise of the BLM branding is now they're burning Bibles and burning crosses. Like they're really starting to show who they are, what their intentions are to the people, right? Because the masks have now evolved into a face covering. And so now we can't see each other's beautiful smiles. Like that human connection, right? Is trying to be taken away. And that's where, you know, when we step into our true power, into our mastery, which is that connection to source, you're invincible. Because, you know, like, it's so interesting that you're talking about both of your experiences this week. I've had some additional challenge this week, right? And even evaluating relationships, saying, you know what, this is not going to work anymore. There's like the trust thing is coming up. It's like the true colors are being presented. It's like, okay, you know what, that's not working. And on the other side of the coin too, because as I say, there's two things happening, right? There's the collapse of the old. We're in this middle period where the new hasn't been born yet, right? These two, well, there's a whole expansion thing happening, because on Monday night, I was sitting with my hubby upstairs, and it felt like I was too big to be in my body. Mm. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I feel bigger than the physical vessel, which is a bit trippy to kind of feel that way, right? Like if I stretch, am I gonna like burst outside of it?
I relate to that a lot, Paula. I actually went to go see a chiropractor, which a lot of people might need to do, because I think also as we are receiving nervous system, spinal, and DNA upgrades at this time. And so if we have, as the Galactics explained to me, if we have trauma that's stored in the spine or in the pelvis that is locked, that we didn't know that we still were locked up in, and I was still locked in my lower hips, it's causing the entire nervous system to get, you know, so you're identifying the areas where the trauma is still needing to be released. But it was very funny, because after I saw the chiropractor, the next day I woke up and I felt like I had grown. And my mother looked at me and she just said, "Did you get taller overnight?" And she was like, "Okay, you're freaking me out now. Are you going to turn into an ET?" You know, because she understands all that. But so it really is happening. We really are kind of coming back into our galactic divine DNA, and that is a process that can be highly uncomfortable on the body, that we also have to go through and understand this is also a very physical experience.
With the central nervous system being stimulated so much, I want to let the folks that are listening know that when you have feelings, when you feel the feeling of kindness, compassion, care for self or another, when you can generate those feelings internally, because the heart sends way more information to the brain than the brain to the heart, those clear signals are like this beautiful sine wave, and they calm the autonomic nervous system down. They soothe it and calm it down, so it's all synchronized and not like parasympathetic, sympathetic, brake gas all the time, which we're literally not operating in the higher mind. Our cognitive functioning is inhibited when you're being pissy with people. And then, of course, we talked about water last week too, right? Water is conscious. This has consciousness. And this is like 70-80% in our body. So when you operate in the world all like selfish, then you are creating in your own body a toxic cesspool of shit, basically. I can't think of another word. that you're walking around in. Whereas on the other side of the coin, right, with Dr. Masaru Emoto, we talked about him before, exactly, because this is the building block of creation, right? This is, if we alter one molecule of this on the planet, we're done. We don't survive. Water is that important. Sorry, someone else was going to say something there. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to add that have the little labels on the water I got from that from a particular show I watched. I agree 100% with what you guys are saying, or you ladies. One of the things is feelings. I think I know I've heard this from many people is, you know, when somebody's talking, they'll say, well, you're so sensitive, you know, from one person to another. Why are you so sensitive? I heard my mom say it about my dad say it about my mom. I've heard many different people talking about that for years now. Probably the past 3 or 4 years, it's gotten stronger and stronger. And to me, that's one of the ways that we're integrating this, is we're actually becoming more mature and recognizing how our responses to things, or our reactions, however you want to say it is, we're actually starting to see our immaturity. And you know, the inner child is immature. It's a child, divine child, you know, divine adolescent, and yet they haven't grown up. So they're at an immature level. And that's one of the things that we want to protect is that level of, you know, beauty and peace that comes from that beautiful expression of creation. But for us to become mature and stand up to the things that we're doing, because we see it mirrored, or we've got somebody that's, you know, saying something that makes us angry, and suddenly we realize we're angry. You know, as we start recognizing the emotions that we are portraying onto others, then we can start stopping that and making different choices, which will create the paradigm we're looking for. To me, you know, I've been confronted with a lot of people, and the first thing I ask myself is, what does love do in this situation? And sometimes it's a tough answer, but you know, you got to walk away sometimes. But a lot of times, if you just sit there and watch that person have their experience, you will see in them something that is hurting. You will see that inner child. And then you can realize that they're just making an expression that they need to try to heal themselves. I mean, we're all trying to become whole. To me, that's, if we can just become the mature adult that takes care of that inner child, we got it.
Yeah.
I think we need to develop the observer, the sort of interested observer of what we're doing.
Yes.
From my experience, most people are sort of on automatic pilot and acting, reacting. And if you can occasionally sort of look at yourself and your life like a scientist would look at an experiment, it helps you pull out and gain that different perspective. Because when you're in a rut of a action-reaction, it's hard to perceive that. And when you do become that observer of you and observer of the people, of what they're doing to you or how things are happening, it actually shifts. It actually causes a frequency shift. It starts the transmutation of the energy in the rut, so that it starts to change to a higher, more bigger picture perspective. And it's from that higher perspective that you can make a greater choice.
When you see that, it's like a neutrality zone. So you get into your neutral zone there, where you're able to be the observer. And when you're in that zone and you're seeing what's actually happening with everything going on, you can start changing your own frequency within that. It's kind of like Abraham Hicks, you know, teaches about the emotional vibrational frequency of things. You can start raising your vibration just by thinking about things that you see in that environment right there. Even if it's a fire or whatever, there's something beautiful there to look at. There's something to have gratitude for. There's something that we can find some peace within. And as we continue to do that, we can raise our vibration enough where that's reverberating out to assist others in finding that peace as well. And I've seen that happen many times where, as the observer, you're not reacting. You are waiting, and you are just there. You're just in the experience. And then as you become more and more calm within yourself, that outside experience becomes easier and easier for you to deal with. And that's what we're doing, is we're finding that way to keep that from going like this and kind of even keel things out.
Yeah, neutrality is so important. If we can be neutral, but what I understand is, in order for neutrality to take place, we need to accept that is. And if you're angry with another for their choice, and we've talked about this before, you cannot judge the path another has claimed that you have not claimed for yourself. It's their journey, their choices, right? So if we can accept, okay, it's happening, and not be attached to someone's behavior, right or wrong, that is how we can step into neutrality. And that truly is where self-mastery starts, right?
Yeah, and we're parenting ourselves all the time. And that's one of the things to remember, is that we are the parent. We're not just the child. And that we can love that inner child, that inner adolescent, forgive ourselves. It doesn't have to be about blame and shame and wrong. And I mean, we have that power, and that's the power we're walking into. We are that.
And within that, it's also really important to claim, and in some ways right now, reclaim our boundaries. Because what I'm also seeing a lot of is people who had wounded inner children, who maybe instead of someone who was wounded as a child decided to grow up and say, well, I'm absolutely not going to treat other people like that. I'm not going to repeat that pattern. Instead, I'm going to heal, and I'm going to help others heal, and this is my path. Instead, you have someone who's chosen to take the opposite approach, and that's not okay anymore.
No, because they haven't healed their own inner.
Exactly. But I think that it's just important, because I'm seeing this a lot with clients, and I've seen this, we do this spiritual bypassing thing where we bypass other people's responsibility, where we go, well, I'm the light worker, and just because I'm aware that you have a wounded inner child, I'm going to take on all your shit because it's okay, because you know what? We've both been through it too. And right now, what is becoming very, very clear is that we need to stop doing that. And that might mean closing the door, locking it, bolting it, and saying, you do not have access to me anymore, because I won't continue to be abused by you. And I don't know why, but that seems to be a very difficult thing for light workers to understand, because on some level, we are so empathic. But that empathy is also becoming, it's like we're poisoning ourselves with that empathy if we allow that empathy to not create the healthy boundaries that we need to have in order to create those separations, to move forward on our path, honor our path, honor their path and their choices, and let them face their own music.
I think boundaries are really important. I think that respecting what other people decide they need is very important. Examples are like with the mask. I'm not for that, of course. I walk into a place and they say, it's required, you got to wear it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really into it. I say, well, you got to wear it anyway. I say, well, can I put it on my head? But I'm not trying to be rebellious. I'm just trying to bring light to the situation. And, I still respect their boundaries, because this is something they want to have for themselves to feel safe. It's like building a fence in your backyard. If you feel like somebody's trying to, like invade your space or something all the time, you don't want to be looked at or something like that. Everybody has those kind of things. And, as long as we're working on our own self, then we don't have to worry about what everybody else is doing. And this is where it comes back down to me, to finding my own alignment, and then, doing what I need to do for me to stay in that alignment. As long as I can continue to do that, I will see results outside of me that are within that alignment.
I agree that before you shut the door, before, Nina, you said, shut the door and make the boundary, you have to understand the reason why you want to shut the door. And you have to understand the emotional content of why you want to shut the door. There has to be a level of analysis that goes on before you shut that door. I'm thinking of, for people potentially who haven't done any spiritual work, haven't done a lot of inner work, that to shut the door is a knee-jerk reaction in some cases. Sure. Without some internal contemplation and awareness of what's in me emotionally, if you shut the door before doing that, you will magnetize somebody else to you that you will have to do that process with, and then shut the door again. So there has to be a pre-self-awareness, analysis that goes on, and coming to peace with that and looking at it as the observer, and then you shut the door from a place of equanimity rather than in a reaction to setting a boundary.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. And speaking more to the light workers, that we can overanalyze, and we've been doing the work for so long that then we're stuck in this over-analysis of how do I help that person? And it's like, no, they've made their choice and you need to close the door now, because it's really just poisonous at this point in time. So, yeah.
I want to talk.
Go on.
Sorry, go ahead. Please continue, Joanne, and then
I was just going to say, I do a lot of work with people who have not been on the path very long at all. So I will talk about this from a very simple level, and so I exactly understand what Nina's saying, but for most of my clients, it is, well, how do you get to there from here? If you're not happy with here and you want to be there, what you have to do first is be happy and content being here, and then you can move there. Because if you're trying to get to a destination because you're not happy here, you are at odds with yourself. You must understand and come to peace and reconcile what is, and then you can move towards something good and not away from something that is bad or not great.
And a lot of people do that because they feel they're obligated. They have an obligation to that individual, perhaps, that it's time to close the door, right? Like there's some kind of I should be doing.
Well, that's what you investigate. Why do you feel obligated? Who told you that you had to be obligated? Is it in any way connected to your survival at a very simple, basic level? Were you the healer or the mediator in your life as a kid? Were you the mediator between mum and dad? Did you take responsibility for somebody's emotions? So for me, a lot of these reactions as an adult you learn them in a simple way as a child, and you're just translating it into your adult interactions.
And for the folks that are listening, there's a really, really good book by Anodia Judith. Her name is Anodia Judith, and it's called, I think it's Eastern Mind, Western, I should know the book if I'm going to quote it, eh? Eastern Mind, Western Philosophy, or something like that. It's the psychology of the chakras. And to your point, when children are just absorbing everything up to the age of 7, they're in that half kind of dream state where they just they're downloading everything around them. And then also, like, I've had clients come to me as well where their trauma was actually when they were in the womb, a baby in utero, and have trauma from whatever was going on with mom and dad when they weren't even born yet. That book, I think it's Eastern Philosophy, Western Mind. It's a Psychology of the Chakras, Anodia Judith. That's a huge, thick book. You can get it on Audible as well. But it goes through all the psychology of the chakras, talks about the demons, the fears, the negative influences that could have happened, all about abuse, betrayal, abandonment, all of that. And how that then, as the child grows up to be the adult, they still have those childhood traumas in their being as they go to work and whatnot. Because if we look at the planet right now, we are acting like a bunch of 2-year-olds in a sandbox that keep just getting bigger and bigger sticks to hit each other over the head with.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous when you really, like, it's ridiculous.
It's time to recognize we're adults.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at, right? We got to the point, evolve or die. And as the guides say, we chose at a higher level to evolve.
Well, if we can raise our frequency, then, you know, that helps others as well. But keeping our frequency high is really, I mean, that's our job. That's our job. It comes right down to it.
Yeah, to love.
Yeah, exactly. And like Laura said, you can lift somebody up or you can tear them down. What are you choosing? Are you choosing love or are you choosing fear? And we don't need to battle fear. We don't need to take fear on. We rise above it.
Yeah, it feels like a calibration process, you know, where I used to work in quality control, where we're trying to find just the right spot, the sweet spot, you know. We've got this over here and we've got this over here, but we really want to bring this all to a sweet spot. And so we're kind of calibrating ourselves, and everyone else is doing the same thing. It's this, you know, fine tuning that we're doing right now that really kind of, you know, that it gets tough sometimes, but we all got to do it.
And then what I would add with respect to any folks that have, if they have like major like shame, like things they were like regrets, I just want to say, like, don't hide things behind your back to Source, because Source sees all, and loves all. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing that you could have ever done that would not be forgiven. In our limitation, in our ignorance, in our immaturity, there's nothing. So don't hide behind your back. And as the guides have shared with me before, make it an offering, like it's a baby bird. Please take this guilt from me, this shame, this horrible thing I've done. Please take this from me as an offering so that the bird can take flight and it can be reclaimed, reknown in a higher way.
Yeah.
In the spiritual school I attended many years ago, we used to have a process called the truth teaching. And we would turn to our next door neighbor and tell them everything that we had been too ashamed to tell and speak out loud. And then they would speak back to us. And we were told you to speak it and say it until it no longer had an emotional charge, because it was just a no thing. If you could talk about it, if you could. So even if in your bathroom or in your living room, you speak out loud what it is you are ashamed of having done, the actual act of speaking it out changes the frequency and changes the energy. Even if you don't say it to anybody, speak it out loud. And it's quite an effective exercise to do.
I agree. You bring it to light.
And the voice really is a stargate. And we have so much power when we use our voices. When we speak out, we are commanding the field around us. We are using our sovereign ability with our vocal resonance.
With light language, what I've understood is, in fact, anybody can learn to speak light language. And when I first started to speak it, I used it and I've incorporated this when I do my healings, that when I was going through emotional things, emotional reactions to stuff, even if I didn't know the language, if I just toned, if I just made any noise and I commanded that noise and I trusted that sound, it could be a note, it could be a sound, it would transmute that trapped energy. That we have that innate intelligence to shift these, because at the core of every emotion that we feel is energy, and that energy is anchored in our energetic system. And it's the process of healing it is actually to transmute the energy that's at the core of those emotions, those emotional reactions. So if you call forth, as you said, Nina, you call forth whatever sound comes from your soul, and you ask that will heal and shift and transmute that energy at the core of that emotion, it will change it for you. And that is the beginning, or that is essentially light language.
Yes.
I've only ever had experience of light language once. I haven't spoken it. And I was going to get a reflexology session done, right? And the lady I went to see, she does something funky with the head, like to get the body ready. And she just did this thing. And then I saw all the light language in my mind. And I was like, wow. I was going to get a reflexology session. And I had all this light language inside, which is cool. They're referred to as like fire letters, are they not? As well, fire letters?
Can be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Mm.
Very cool.
Well,
I was just going to share that I know that when, I know that in the past when I've looked at a behavior of my own that I was ashamed of, because sometimes we can't see it, right? For me anyway, I wasn't able to see it. But on this particular occasion, I could see it. And I was actually in my closet crying because I was mortified that I had this behavior. And what was really cool was in that moment, because I'm asking for guidance, right? I'm asking Source, like, help me out here. There was a presence in my space that was so huge. It was like, it's so hard to explain. It's kind of like, no worries, my child. You know, God bless you, you're fine. It might hurt to speak those words, you know, to hear it come out loud, right? Because you don't want to admit, right? You don't want to speak the words out loud of something that you're so mortified that you've done. My point is, though, in the experience that I did that, it was actually beautiful. Because once I could see it, and once I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be like this. Like, let's transform this. It's like it was healed in an instant. And there was a knowing that came in behind it to kind of support the release of it, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it's a recognition, you know, when we first recognize it, then we're able to actually integrate that if we choose to. There is a choice involved. We can decide to go down a different road and get deeper into it, or we can choose to integrate it and find a better feeling. Forgive ourselves because we didn't do anything. I mean, there's no shame in saying the wrong thing. I mean, I could be saying something here that's wrong. And, oh, well, you know, it happens. and that's where we decide that it's okay. I mean, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. It's okay. We all love each other, really, deep down. It's that acceptance of ourselves that helps us to create that knowing going forward that it's going to be all right. Hang in there.
Yeah, the phrase that I like is, what you resist persists, and what you feel will heal. So don't be afraid of these feelings. I think that what happens is, because they were originally felt when you were a little child, they were overwhelming at that point. You didn't know how to handle such emotions. So the reluctance to feel the emotions is really the child's reluctance. And actually, when you turn and face it as an adult with the resources that we have now as an adult, with the support that we have as an adult, you see that it isn't as overwhelming and huge as you thought, because it's actually the inner child's perspective of that feeling that you formed very early on.
That just needs love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. We're really re-identifying with what true source means. I mean, it's a very personal journey. And when it's wrapped up in a group or a religion or a tradition, or, you know, something that creates, you know, punishment or shame or blame or guilt, I mean, it's so terrible that our relationship with source has been so targeted, because, you know, if one questions it, then there's all sorts of projections and labels that get thrown, similar to starseeds that are trying to do well in school and might have a hard time sitting still, called ADHD or you know, learning disabilities. It's all these negative stigmas that we carry, when actually we were being intelligent all along, or going about things, you know, the right way. And it could be a lot to, you know, shake off when there's not a lot of like-minded people around. That's why it's so surreal, since social media came about, to meet so many like-minded people. It's just like the biggest thing is just like, what? Yeah. So it's just crazy how it's so embedded in our culture, this level of invalidation. And yeah, so it's a process, but it's a beautiful process, because once we create that divorce, once we create the cord cutting, and we allow the real energetic flow to begin to take over, that's when the magic and synchronicities really flow, and we find soul family. We step into our purpose. We move into, you know, different, you know, jobs or daily practices that are in alignment with, you know, our truth, and our higher awareness becomes a way of life, and we begin to walk that path fully and completely without any contradiction or compartmentalism. And that's the huge problem, is this polarity, the polarization of higher awareness and then physical lifestyle, or higher awareness being lost to a person because they're bumping their head against too much in this personality matrix and taking it too personally, to the point of, you know, feeling defeated, and maybe grabbing, you know, some sort of vice or some sort of coping mechanism that dims that light even further. So it's just so amazing. We're in the times of, like, there being so much more healthy support and genuine support for others. And I just feel that so much with you women, and it's just so great to be here with you guys.
I agree. I feel the same way.
Yes.
I
Yeah, I
agree.
think that about the relationship with source is so unique and so individualized. You really can't explain it with words, right? It's experiential. And I know for me, my life is incredible since I've brought source into my world and into my experience. It really is magical. You know, everything has, the simplest of things have such incredible meaning, you know, like, oh my God, it's a monarch butterfly, you know, like it's behind me just to say hello. It's like, God, it's so beautiful, you know, or a tree, or the breeze. It feels like it's kissing, you know, your face, and knowing that God is everything, and source is everything. And yeah, Laura was just saying it really has been stigmatized and attacked, and there it's almost like it's almost as scary to say that you support, you're in love with God, as it is to say that you kind of don't mind what Trump is doing, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you know, we need to stone you in the town square kind of thing.
I think that the appreciation, you know, you ask about tools and stuff, and we all have an appreciation for life. We all have an outlook of looking for things that feel good for us, and finding people that we can connect with that feel good. And those are great tools. Meditation, of course. You know, anything that we can find a way to tell ourselves we're okay, you know, and see things that are okay. That continues that process.
It's amazing to me that we've been taught to be ashamed of feeling or talking about source being your greatest lover. Like, really? And when you really are able to embrace source being your greatest lover, it really does become a sensual experience, which allows the nervous system to relax. And when you're feeling that wind, when you're feeling that sand, when you're feeling that ocean, it is like you are being touched by your lover. And yet we have this, oh my God, don't talk about that. Don't talk about God in relationship to sex. Like, God forbid. Oh my God, lock it up. Don't talk about it. And instead, we're just going to molest each other, and we're going to sleep with children, and we're just going to, it's like, no, we're not. This is not working, and this hasn't worked, and it's it's a lie. It's a complete and total lie. This is kind of raw, but I'm going to share it. I've worked with women who have been through a tremendous sexual molestation, and they needed to, so this is for men and women right now, and I'm being guided to share this. And there is a part of me that's like, really? I'm going to say this out loud, but yeah, I'm going to say this out loud. They had really been trying to reconnect to their own sexuality. And they had all these memories of being sexually traumatized, and this someone else taking their power from them and feeling like they had been disconnected from their own sexuality. And one of the most healing things that they started to do was in their own physical self-loving, as in, I don't even really like the word masturbation, but let's say self-healing, sexual self-healing, they started thinking about God. They started thinking about source. And it was creating this tremendous healing of understanding that that is pure, and reclaiming that purity and reclaiming their own cosmic sovereignty and healing this area. And so I've seen tremendous transformations with people with that. And we've talked about bringing source into the bedroom. So I figure, well, let's bring it into every area.
Yeah, because you don't leave God at home when you go to work.
No.
You know, you don't have that like, oh, this is where I'm in my God self, and then you go about your day. It's like your life is really, and you include source into everything, into your food, blessing your water, you know, into the bedroom, because when you bring source into the bedroom.
Yeah, that's a different perspective than I've ever heard, but let me say that when I listen to a love song, that's what I feel.
Yes. We need to stop being afraid of pleasure, because while our nervous systems are locked in fight or flight, we're not able to experience the pleasure that we can experience from source. And we've been being run by people that are finding pleasure in what we would consider to be extremely horrific practices. So there's a rebalance that needs to occur within the reawakening of the divine feminine, of reclaiming that pleasure piece. And it's okay for that divine feminine element to come out of each of us and to be expressed. Gaia is reclaiming her sovereignty, and so we as her cosmic flowers are reawakening within as well. Our wombs are awakening, our pleasure centers are reawakening, and we're feeling like we're being released from these lifetimes of enslavement.
Well, I'm aware that when we do start operating from all chakras, we are like turned on all the time.
Yes.
But it is our social conditioning that has linked that feeling with sex. But in fact, when you are fully manifesting, you feel we take away that connotation. It is just being turned on to life. But we've altered it. It's been altered in our society.
Yeah, when you look at the way children grow up as babies in an orphanage scenario, if they're not touched and cuddled and nuzzled, they stop growing. And if it happens long enough, they'll die. They will not make it. So so it's very clearly evident from when we're little babies that human touch, like we're mammals, right? We touch each other and we cuddle, and it's like you say, it doesn't need to be a sexual energy. It's very sensual, where everything is alive with the pleasurable experience. And to your point, Nina, the activities that they've been doing here has completely debased all of it. It's made it ugly and destroyed the beauty and the sacredness. Because I think we've talked about this before. If you think about our boys, right, our guys, the men, when do they really truly let go and surrender to God? It's in an orgasm, right? Oh God, that's right. You know what I mean? I know sometimes on our pathways on these chats sometimes take us down.
Right.
Go ahead, Joe. You want to say something? Nina?
It's all part of
yeah, it is. Look, every aspect of life is God. Sexuality, enjoyment, pleasure. We shouldn't push that aside. I think that's part of the problem. But I would like to say that towards the end of this, I would like to do a little mini process to help heal some aspects of that inner child, if everybody would like that.
Actually, I think that would be lovely, and maybe we can include Nina, because you have some, maybe the both of you can lead us through something that we do for the collective, whatever would be the most appropriate thing that can come through to help every person that might come across this video in times to come, that'll help heal something within themselves, because we know that when we heal a shadow within ourselves, we lift a shadow from the world. So thank you, Joanne. I would love that. And I know the rest of us would love it too.
I think we're all just, looking for becoming whole. How do we become more whole? And integrate all of the source that we can.
Well, that's integrating the shadow, isn't it? It's
Yes,
integrating the things we judge in ourselves.
Yes.
There's a book that I read a long time ago by, if you, for example, are messy, you have a messy house and you beat yourself up for being messy, but you would like to be better, but you're really messy. He said that what you do is you come back and you just admit, I'm messy, without judgment, without trying not to be not messy. And in that integration, in that acceptance of what we judge in ourselves, we actually transmute and dissipate that energy. And then we can naturally move into a place, if we choose, of being tidy. But what keeps us from that is pushing and fighting against that shadow within us.
I agree.
It's amazing how when we speak truth, we set ourselves free when we admit our truth. And so ultimately, as all of this truth is coming out, we are setting ourselves free as a collective, but we're also going through a massive purging and detox of things that we didn't know we had in our systems. And that's what I keep seeing this as, is like, well, we're all throwing up together, but we didn't know we had to do a collective throw up. And there's a lot to throw up. So, and Gaia's throwing up too, right? We're all throwing up and vomiting together. I mean, it really does look like this sometimes.
Right. And what's funny is if we overanalyze it and look into the toilet and get lost and like, what's in there? It's like, then we because a lot of people are on information overload. So it's like we got to throw up and flush and get enough of an idea of what we're purging, but not get too lost in the overanalyzation of it, But it is a total global detox right now in deprogramming, and the cabal wouldn't exist unless we were feeding it. So we're puking up, all these unconscious agreements and all this dependency and all this stuff that we've allowed to define us. And it's going to feel so much lighter, but like any healing crisis, it's so much worse when you're in the thick of it, but it means that energy is moving. So even if it feels really heavy for people and really dense and like we're taking a bunch of steps back, as long as our perspective is in alignment with positive movement forward and what's available on a cosmic and earthly organic ascension level, I think we're going to be feeling really good real soon. And I love what we were saying about the energy centers, right? That's huge, because they have been implanted, distorted, they're clogged up. I mean, what's happened to the stargates on Earth and the Earth grids is what's been happening with our own energetic body and DNA and energy centers. So doing that inner work actually like corrects the distortions and reversals on the planet. So people need to realize we all have that purpose. There's no person that isn't tasked with that level of challenge. And all our organs and glands are connected as well. So when we get sick or have physical symptoms, if we could just see it from a more multidimensional perspective, it's sickness that can actually make us healthier than ever if we understand it and listen to it. But we've been taught to allow it to cause fear, to give our power away, to take things that might not be good for our bodies that cause even more problems in the long run, and a greater disconnect, when really adversity, can be the gateway to find home again, and including the physical discomforts and even injuries. There's a greater wisdom and reason behind it that we have to get in touch with for the transformation and healing to occur.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that when you feel something, Joanne, you'd mentioned what you resist persists and what you feel heals. In the moment that you allow yourself to feel something and allow the tears to flow, it's like it heals itself immediately. The moment you've kind of felt it and allowed it to come up, it actually subsides, or it's cleared, it's released.
But I would also say that when you're in the midst of the emotion, keep 2 molecules of your brain watching what you're going through. That's the observer, and that helps the shift as well. Because it is too easy to get caught up and swim in the emotion and not transmute it. That's my experience anyway, that yes, you feel it, but you go, oh, here's this emotion. Oh, I'm processing this. This is old. This is a pattern. This is not mine. This is something that I've, adopted as a truth through the social conditioning. And when you keep that 2 molecules watching yourself go through this, that is even more beneficial and makes the process even more powerful from my experience.
Yeah, I usually go through my checklist. Like, what's this? What's that? No, it's not that. No, everything here is good. That's good. Okay, so you go through like your whole logic, right? Kind of go through my whole, and then I'm like, okay, so this isn't my stuff. This isn't. I don't know what it is that I'm feeling. So then I'll go do a practice that does lift me. Go for a walk or take a salt bath or what have you. Everybody has their own process. But when you get it, it's like a huge excavation, because the energy around the planet is truth, and the light is being shone on everything. And of course, when the light is shone in the darkness, everything that's been hiding underneath the rocks, scurry, right? Because it's amazing right now, you've got that the Epstein files dropped on Friday or Thursday, and all the video stuff is dropping on Monday. Some very prominent people have been named, and yet none of them are being talked about on the media, which is so interesting.
The evolution will not be televised.
Yeah. What's interesting about the COVID time is, on one hand, it was actually a good thing, because the lockdown, for all of its problems and what it's doing to the economy, etc., it's forcing people to not be distracted. And for some people, this is their first time ever getting in touch with what they're feeling inside. You can only watch so much television. You can, after a time, you've got to turn it off, and then you're alone with your thoughts, because the rest of the time we're normally working or, going out drinking or, going and playing to watch sport. And so we're constantly busy, busy, busy. So on one level, the being forced into lockdown is part of this, as you say, this vomiting process, because you are no longer able to distract yourself with your normal busy life. And up it comes, and what am I going to do with this? And so some people are facing feelings that have been in this inner child for the first time in their lives.
Yeah, and the ego doesn't like it. the healing process, and that's where like the acting out, the narcissistic personality, you know, all these personality disorders just emerge out of the denial of needing to look at the wounds and maybe having to rethink things. And we're not given enough time to go through a dark night of the soul with the kind of schedules and work demands and the way they've set up our survival space as humans. Don't give us a whole lot of time to do inner work and process through stuff that can sometimes take months. That's why I hit the road and lived out of a vehicle for a long time. I'm like, there's no way I can work. I'm going into the underworlds here, and there's just no way I can function. But there is zero permission, and it's an addiction matrix. So it's either television or materialism on some level, emotional eating, addiction to, you know, substances, and of course the horrific representation of sexuality without love, and so the theft of losing real connection to nature and our own divine mother and father, the true, you know, connection with source, has left us you know, falling into this vampiric system, and that's where we're in danger of being digressed, similar to these beings, where we lose connection and we need to find something else to feed on in order to, and that's why an unhealed person with trauma who's a narcissistic personality is literally an energy vampire, because they can't get that direct connect because they're not willing to be humble enough to heal. So where can they take energy from others in their environment? And that's exactly what the cabal does. So, and if the cabal, I mean, that's the shadow side of humanity. I mean, we're going through the dark night of the soul, another cycle of it, as in terms of Gaia and what this planetary consciousness has gone through in terms of, you know, these, you know, control systems, getting over the false king of tyranny archetypes and the patriarchy, the Saturn moon matrix type stuff. But yeah, it's like the divine masculine, you know, the shadow work of what the masculine has gone through, the programmings that they've adopted. It's very difficult for the male ego that has been trained to not be sensitive. It's just crazy. I hope I didn't cut anybody off.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, Laura, because when you think about it, you teach men or little boys, you know, big boys don't cry, you know, you can't cry, don't feel your emotions or whatever. You end up having men that are emotionally unavailable to their partners, their own loved ones. And then also that dovetails or has a knock-on effect even in the boardroom. And then you have acquisitions, you know, people taking over other businesses and not thinking, well, it's going to completely destroy a community when that whole company is outsourced somewhere else, right? It's void of, you know, I think I read something once about, we'll get to a point eventually where, you know, people might want to war. Well, actually, this is not true because you're going to shift right into a different consciousness. But I think I read once before that men wouldn't go into war because the women would never allow it. We would never allow harm to come to another human being, right? But we need to be emotionally. You got to feel stuff. You got to feel it. Otherwise, we're zombies. Because it's the emotion that enrich the experience, right? It's how you feel. That's what makes being a human being so delicious.
Well, men are not only taught to be emotionally unavailable to their partners, they're emotionally unavailable to themselves. So they've got the double whammy. At least women discuss it and talk about it and are into being able to feel. So we might not get the whole picture, but guys have that double problem. They are not available to themselves.
And not all men are like that. I mean, again, it's something we've seen as a culture through time, but not all men are like that. Some are very sensitive, right? And it's
absolutely
the same way with women. You know, like I grew up. One of my traumas was not being able to play the same games, you know, that the boys were playing, and I wanted to. So that was one of my traumas that I had to work through. But whenever I realized that that's part of the programming, I was like, wow.
I definitely challenged it. My sister put gum in my hair and I cut my hair real short, and then everybody was like, are you a boy or a girl? So then I was like, okay, fine. I called myself Chris and I pretended I was a boy, and I was like 8 years old, and I would just go out and play Tonka trucks and like totally be like the dude. And I was like their best friend, and I was Chris. And this was a YMCA camp, so it was separate than school, because obviously the school, elementary school, already knew who I was, but this was like a side camp thing. And I totally leveraged it. And I had these like, I was like their best friend, and like, see you later, Chris. And then my mom comes and picks me up. She's like, Laura. And they were like looking around like, who are they talking to? And I felt so bad, but I couldn't help myself.
I love it. That's amazing. My mom was total feminist, and so I was her first child. And so she would dress me in like neutral clothing. And as I was growing up, naturally, without the influence of anyone, all I wanted was pink and sparkles and lace. And she said it was this huge healing process for her to understand that it wasn't always just taught through conditioning that girls would like these things, but that some actually came in with it. And she started wearing skirts again and embracing her femininity again. It was really fun.
And mine was the opposite, where my mom, I'm the firstborn as well, and my mom wanted the frilly girl to do all, and I'm, nope, jeans, t-shirts, completely opposite.
We get what we need, right?
Sorry, Nina, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I'm just looking at our time, so I think maybe this is a really good time to maybe do that process, Joanne and Nina, that we were talking about, if we can do a collective healing for the inner child in every one of our brothers and sisters, in an effort to help those children that are not safe and free and cared for and loved. So if you do that, it would be awesome. Thank you.
All right, so make sure you're comfortable where you're sitting, and I want you to close your eyes and go within and just sort of scan your body. And when you scan your body from your toes, up your legs, your torso, and your head, it helps you get grounded back in your body. So take a couple of breaths, slow breaths. Now I want you to think of something that happened recently that emotionally triggered you. It could be big or small. It could be what is happening to the children, or it could be what is happening in your community or in your family. It's important to see if you can locate body. If you're able to locate that, then I want you to drop into the center of that feeling. Relax the muscles in the body around that feeling, and be willing to feel what is there. And just breathe in and feel. Ilalayo, ilalayo, oyan, yan, 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 yan. Oyan, yan, 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 yan. Oyan, yan, 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 yan. And keep breathing and relaxing into Undayatarikisena utotoshtakatarikambotololiototochtikinnayananeka ilololiokukubayati kanayatatikataliatikashteenanayandarki Isakatayukoto chikoto umbuto stendariatarikika. Ilalalioko kotariate sayanananianda. Ilalaliata. Ilalaliata. Una. And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So the words and the frequencies recalibrated the energy at the core of that emotion. And it will dissipate just like when the sun shines on fog, and those frequencies help that energy at the center to dissipate and leave.
So I'm being guided to share some Theta downloads. So I'll do them in English and light language. So everyone that's tuning in, if you just say yes and you wish to receive these downloads, you're just giving your permission. Creator of all that is, it is commanded that everyone listening be downloaded into their bodies, into all levels, their cells, their genetics, and their DNA. I know what it feels like for my inner child to feel safe, to be in my body. I know what it feels like for my inner child to feel impervious to evil. I am impervious to evil. I know what it feels like to feel protected always by Source, Creator of all that is. I know what it feels like to live without traumas and my path in life. I know what it feels like to walk forward, and I can walk forward without carrying all of this trauma in all of my cells in my being. I know what it feels like to feel free as I walk forward without carrying all of this. I have Creator's truth, perspective, wisdom, and understanding of who I am without this. I have forgiveness, and I can see these experiences individually and collectively through Creator's truth, perspective, wisdom, and understanding. I know what it feels like for my nervous system to relax. It is commanded, Creator, that all listening be downloaded with relaxation, nervous system relaxation, nervous system calm, peace, groundedness. I know what it feels like to live in my nervous system without fight or flight. I know what it feels like to witness these revealings and learn these truths without fight or flight, without going into trauma. I know how to see it all through Creator's truth, perspective, wisdom, and understanding, and to feel protected as I observe and witness this. Downloaded into cells, genetics, DNA, into all levels with grace and with ease, without crisis, in the best and highest way, and for the best and highest. Thank you, Creator. Thank you, Creator. It is done. It is done. It is done. Creator, show me. Sending love to all the babies in the wombs, being the inner children in their mother's wombs. Everyone listening right now, sending love to the baby that was you in your mother's womb. Thank you, Creator. It is done. It is done. It is done. Creator, show me. We are complete.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Joanne. And Jane and Laura. Thank you so much. And thank God for love and light and for healing. And what a glorious way to end our chat today. I'm just going to stop the recording now. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us. Stay in your glorious heart and breathe. Breathe. We'll be fine.